Hi chess fans, welcome to this video. We will have a look at a game of the FIDE World Blitz World Championship in 2014 between Magnus Carlsen and Judit Polgar. And even though it's a blitz game, this is a very interesting game. Let's jump right into it. Magnus Carlsen with white, Judit Polgar with black, d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight c3, bishop g7, the king's Indian. After e4, d6, f3, the Samish variation, where white normally often tends to play g4. An attack, castle, bishop e3, a6, knight g2, c6. And now Judit Polgar wants to develop some play on the queen side, and Magnus Carlsen played a4. First question of this video, this clearly prevents b5, but what is the drawback of this move? If you want, pause your video and try to find the answer to the question. What's the drawback of a4? Okay, the drawback of a4 is that there is now a hole here in the position and black can exploit it, as Judit Polgar played in the game a5 with the idea of playing the knight to a6 and then to b4. That's why in this position here, to stop b5, people often also play c5. Okay, a5, a4, a5, and now knight g3. I'm not so sure what's the plan behind this move. I think it's super solid, but it also doesn't do so much. But very interesting move. Okay, knight a6, bishop e2, queen c7, castle, e5, d5, and now h5. Question number 2. What is the idea behind this move? What does black want to do? Okay, the idea behind this move is to push the pawn forward and attack the knight on g3. This is actually a very common motive if your opponent has a piece here. Often these pieces are vulnerable, and especially when they don't have so many squares to go to, often these pieces are vulnerable as targets for attack in a pawn storm, because the pawn pushes forward and moves towards the king, but at the same time also attacks a piece and forces white to move. Okay, so because of this knight, black can mobilize his pawns really quickly, or her pawns really quickly. Okay, knight h1, knight h5, knight f2. The knight takes some time to get back into the game. f5, very aggressive play by Judit Polgar against the reigning world champion. Knight d3, because the threat of f4, which also was played in the game. The bishop now can retreat to f2. And now the ultra-aggressive queen to g3. Now, question number 3 of this video. Can white take this knight? Okay, white cannot take this knight because after h takes, the bishop is attacked. The bishop doesn't have any squares but has to drop back. And now queen b6. And the motive is that this pawn controls both the f2 and the h2 square. The rook is kind of blocked in here and cannot move anywhere because it's blocked by the bishops. And after this check, if king h1, black has the resource queen to d8, bringing the queen over to the other side of the board. And because black will win tempo with this check on the king, black is actually threatening mate now, and white cannot do anything against it other than giving up material. So amazingly, this knight on g3 cannot be taken. Instead, Magnus Carlsen played rook f d1, taking the rook out of the attack of the knight. And Judit Polgar decided to close the position with c5. Not so sure what was her idea here, because it also creates a hole here, and she overlooked that white now has a defensive resource. And question number 4, what defensive resource does white have? Okay, white's pieces are a little bit locked in here, and this knight is really dangerous. The pawns are far advanced. The queen, as we have seen in the other variation, can swing over really quickly. So white is clearly defending here a little bit. And white has the defensive resource of now taking the knight. So white has won a piece, and the defensive resource is to now give back this material immediately. And the point is that now black does not have this check anymore because the pawn blocks the diagonal. And after f takes g3, this is what happened in the game. White can play queen g5, and this pawn ends up being weak. So white has one material, immediately given it back, and achieved an activation of the queen, and suddenly these pawns will look very weak, and the king also looks a little bit shaky. Okay, queen f7, protecting this pawn. Knight b5, highlighting the weakness of this pawn in combination with this weak square. Queen f6, establishing coordination with this pawn, and now queen takes g3. White is now a pawn up. But question number 5, what positional resources does black have? Maybe as compensation for the pawn, and also, are they really a threat for white? Are those potential positional resources of black even a problem for white? Okay, so black has 2 positional resources. First of all, this knight can jump into this hole in the position. That's good. And second, black has the bishop pair, and if you have the bishop pair, you want to look at the bishop that the other side does not have. So white only has a light squared bishop, and black has the extra black squared bishop, in combination with the fact that these black squares here potentially can get very weak. And so in the next few moves, we can see that Judit Polgar wants to play with these position advantages and try to capitalize on these positional resources, but we will also see that they are not actually really a problem for white. So bishop h3, trying to highlight the weakness of the dark squares, and black would love to transition the bishop here. Okay, but white can simply play king f2, and suddenly all of the squares are protected and the bishop cannot penetrate and enter the position. And then Judit Polgar played knight to b4, which is the other positional resource maybe, but it turns out white can always simply take this knight and exchange it for this knight, which does not look too active here anyways. And what can the black knight do here? At the moment, not really so much. So maybe this outpost isn't actually that strong. Contrast that with the white outpost, which is keeping pieces busy protecting this weakness here. So this white knight here is much more useful than this black knight here. Okay, the game continued. Rook h1, hitting the bishop, king g7, protecting the bishop, queen h4, offering exchange of queens, black accepts, hitting the rook drops back, still leaving some space to double the rooks, and now Judit Polgar played the ultra aggressive bishop e3 check. So question number 6, what is the purpose behind this move? Why is black seemingly sacrificing this bishop? Okay, the idea is that, and this is also what happened in the game, king takes e3, black has this knight fork, and king to d2, knight takes rook, and now it looks like black simply won the rook for the bishop, but of course the white king can go to c3, controlling those two squares, so the knight cannot escape. And the next move, the rook will move to h1, attack the knight, and then take the knight. There's no way that this knight can go anywhere. So what was the purpose behind this move in the first place? Very interesting. The purpose was that, okay, here white has to react and take, and then there's this check, white has to react again. So all of those new moves in terms of time spent were neutral. And now black takes, and white needs to spend 1, 2, 3 moves to simply win back the knight, leaving this rook on a pretty passive square here as well. So in effect, bishop e3 is sacrificing the 2 pieces for rook for time. That's very interesting. So Judit Polgar believes 3 moves of time in this position are worth more than giving up the 2 pieces for rook. Very, very interesting. And in fact, this rook is a little bit passive, and this weakness needs to be dealt with. So 3 moves of time might actually be quite valuable for black here. Okay, so how does black now use this time? Turns out black does not have so many active plans, so maybe this is also why Magnus Carlsen was going for it. Black was first protecting this pawn on d6, which is attacked by the knight. Okay, rook h1, then bishop d7, attempting to exchange this bishop for the knight. And you can see white has to use 3 tempos, but now the rook drops back. Black is in fact using all of those tempos to neutralize the weakness, or neutralize the knight who was attacking the weakness on d6. Okay, the game continued b3 and rook h8. Okay, let's have a look at this position here. White is material up. White is in fact a pawn up and has the 2 pieces for the rook. But this white bishop here looks kind of blocked by these pawns, and also this knight does not have at the moment so many squares to go to. So what could be, and this is a question of strategic play, so what should be white's strategy on how to rearrange his pieces to get rid of or to activate those 2 pieces? What strategic or positional moves? But it's strategic because you have to imagine how the position should change so that these 2 pieces can be activated to maximum effect. And this is very, very interesting. So think a little bit about what could be the best configuration of pieces here. Question number 7 of this video. Okay. Super interesting. This is really very, very instructive. Imagine you have this position in one of your games and you're playing with white. Magnus Carlsen played b6. And the idea, I mean, look at this position. Who gets the idea of playing b6 here? But actually, once you now look at the strategic plan, it becomes very, very clear why you would play b6 here. This bishop is going to move here, and this is an amazing place for the bishop. Compare the place of the bishop here as compared to here. The bishop is totally blocked in here, and by playing b6 and attempting to move the bishop here, this totally improves the value of this piece. And what about the knight? So the bishop will go here, and the knight, after the bishop has moved there, the knight will go via b2 to c4. And what b6 did, it also made sure that this pawn on a5 will always be weak, and this pawn on d6 will also always be weak. And by repositioning the knight to c4, white from this square will attack both of the weaknesses. So b6 is making room for the bishop and also makes sure that these two pawns are weak, allowing the knight to get to an optimal square on c4. Very, very interesting. In this position, to play the kind of counterintuitive move, b6, it's such an amazing move and so instructive. So if you're in a position like this, think about how can you rearrange your pieces and how can you maybe reconfigure the pawn structure to get your pieces to maximum effect. Okay, and then the rest of the game is also very instructive, because if you have this piece configuration in mind, you have to make sure that the tactics work. So as you transition your pieces into the target structure, you have to make sure that all the tactics are working and that there's no blows that your opponents can put on you. And it turns out Magnus Carlsen has also taken care of all the tactics. And remember, this is a blitz game. So b6, rook h2. What do you do about this weakness? You simply play rook g1 and nothing will happen. The rooks, both of them, will never actually penetrate in here. So as you implement your strategy of rearranging the knight and the bishop, the rook here simply blocks off everything. No rook will be able to penetrate this position. Okay, and what about rook a6? The knight is at the moment blocking this bishop. So is it a tactical opportunity that black will simply win this pawn? White played knight b2. And now the last question of this video: can black take the pawn on b6? Okay, the answer is no. And because it was a blitz game, Judit Polgar took the pawn. And now white has the resource bishop b5. And as you can see, this rook is now trapped. The rook cannot move to any of these squares. The rook can also not move here. It can sacrifice itself against the bishop, but this would lose the exchange. In the next move, white will win the rook and the game. And here is where Judit Polgar resigned. Super interesting game, super aggressive play by Judit Polgar, good defensive moves by Magnus Carlsen, and then the amazing and instructive b6 to activate his material, the advantage material that he had. Okay, as the last part of this video, just a little anecdote. In 2014, when this game was played during the Blitz World Champion, Magnus Carlsen went on to win this tournament and become the Blitz World Champion of 2014. And the little anecdote is, in a game between Magnus Carlsen and Laurent Fressinet, the strong French grandmaster, who is also a second to Magnus Carlsen, and they are good friends. And if you looked around a little bit on YouTube, there's this video between Magnus Carlsen and Laurent Fressinet where Magnus Carlsen is really making fun of him while they are blitzing, when he's saying too weak, too slow. And this is actually a game that they played in the same World Championship, in the same World Blitz Championship in 2014. Laurent Fressinet with white plays e4, and Magnus Carlsen plays knight f6. And this was played in the Blitz World Championship. It's not a fun game, it's a real game. And the Alekhine defense is maybe already a little doubtful. And here Magnus Carlsen played the variation knight g8. So look at this. In the same Blitz World Champion, Laurent Fressinet e4, knight f6, e5, knight g8, and d4. And if you look at the video of this game, you will see how cheeky Magnus Carlsen is actually smiling and laughing when he played knight g8. And he's actually looking at Laurent Fressinet, and they are both like smiling. So important lesson not to taking yourself too seriously. By the way, Magnus Carlsen ended up winning this game with black against Laurent Fressinet. And then he became world champion in the same tournament. Okay guys, thanks a lot for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot from this game. If you like those videos, don't forget to click subscribe so you get a new update from YouTube when new videos become available. Thanks a lot.